Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Pahud. Today, I want to talk about building AWS CDK construct library with Projen. So the construct is the building block of AWS CDK. And AWS CDK provides different level of constructs. For example, the level 1 construct is a one-to-one mapping to the CloudFormation resources. And the level 2 construct is the offering by the AWS CDK upstream with the CDK abstraction, which allows us to create the AWS resources in a very straightforward way with many sensible defaults. And we also have some L3 constructs in AWS CDK, for example, the AWS ECS patterns and the AWS ECS extensions. However, we can build our own constructs. And the most simple approach is by building constructs with Projen. In case you miss it, the Projen is the project generator, which is literally CDK for projects, just announced last month in the CDK Day. So if you are just interested in the introduction of Projen, you can go to YouTube and search the CDK Projen and scroll down and go to the CDK Day 2020. And there's a talk by Elad introducing a basic concept of a Projen. And during the last few months, I have been creating many different projects with Projen. For example, the cdk-serverless-lamp, which is a CDK construct that allows us to create a serverless lamp stack, including the Lambda API gateway, MySQL, and PHP. And we can just instantiate the serverless Laravel construct and create everything behind it. And this project is created by Projen. And we have another interesting project, cdk-K3s cluster. This project is also created by Projen, and it provides a construct to help us easily instantiate the K3s cluster, and behind the scene, auto-scaling group, EC2 instance with the K3s cluster is running behind the thing. And I also have a very interesting project, cdk-gitlab, which is also created by Projen. And it provides a provider to help us to create, for example, the Fargate EKS cluster for the GitLab integration, or to create the Fargate runner for it. Today, I'm going to show you how to build a very simple construct with Projen. And I will call this project the cdk-bar, B-A-R. Because I just created the CDK full last month, so I cannot create that package again. So today I'm gonna create cdk-bar, B-A-R. Okay, so let's get it started. So now I'm going to create an empty directory, for example, cdk-bar, and I just go to the directory, open with VS Code. Okay, so now I'm in the cdk-bar empty directory. So, and now I'm going to initialize this directory and make it a project with Projen. So I'm gonna run npx projen new and hit enter. And this will display many different types of projects, including the AWS CDK application TypeScript and the AWS CDK construct, CDK's construct, and you name it. So today we'll create the CDK construct. So I'm gonna run the npx projen new AWS CDK construct and hit enter. Okay, so the Projen will create all the required dot files for you, including the, for example, the ESLint, RC, git ignore, mergefile, YAML, npm ignore, and the version RC license file, package.json, README, tsconfig, version.json, etc. And the most important of all is the projenrc.js, which is the single file. You just need to edit this file, and this file will create and generate everything you need for this project. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna edit this file, remove the comments, and you'll see that there's a project by instantiate the AWS CDK construct library class, right? And the project name is cdk-bar, and we can we need to define what is the bar, what is cdk-bar. cdk-bar is the construct for developer, for people that by instantiate this construct, we can create, for example, a serverless microservice running in VPC. Okay, so this construct will live in VPC. It could be a new VPC or any existing VPC. So we absolutely will require, for example, AWS ECS construct, because the ECS construct library provides the VPC for you, right? So now I'm gonna define the CDK dependencies. For example, we're gonna install the AWS CDK, AWS EC2 construct, and AWS CDK, AWS ECS construct, because we are gonna create a Fargate service behind the application load balancer, and the AWS CDK, AWS ECS patterns as well. And okay, that's all. And of course, we will need the core CDK core library. So I'm gonna install all the required dependency, and I just need to define the name here, and I just hit save and run the npx Projen again. Okay, and the npx will synthesize the definition from this file into all the required files and all the required configurations for you. For example, in this case, Projen just synthesized the package.json for me. And this file has quite a lot of definition, including the package dependencies, dev dependencies, and the peer dependencies. Okay. So I don't have to worry about how to maintain or update this file. I only have to care about the projenrc.js file, right? Okay. So when you hit the npx Projen, the Projen will synthesize this definition into all the files and all the metadata, and also install the required packages from the npm for you. So now I'm gonna edit the index.js under the source directory. Okay, here. So for example, we need to define our first construct, the bar construct, right? So for example, I'm gonna import the core library. And I will need to import the EC2 and the ECS. And the ECS patterns as well. Right? And I'm gonna define my construct. So export. The construct name is bar, because my package name is cdk-bar. So my construct name would be bar. with the capital B. And we will most of the time we'll have to define the construct properties. For example, we'll have a property, the BarProps. And for example, we have an optional VPC property, which is an optional one, and the type is VPC interface. So we'll have the BarProps here, which could be empty, right? Okay. Okay. So now we have an empty CDK construct, the bar, right? And we have to determine the VPC to if there's any existing VPC passed in, then we just use the existing VPC. Otherwise, we create a new one, right? So the VPC would be the VPC property. Okay, so if the VPC is undefined, then we just create a new one. With single net gateway, okay? And okay, and now we'll need to create the ECS cluster and the test definition and the Fargate service. Okay, so cluster, the ECS cluster would be a new cluster. In the VPC. Right? And now we have to define the test definition. And because we are gonna create a Fargate service, so there is a Fargate test definition from the ECS construct library. So we simply create a Fargate test definition. And with the required CPU and memory. Right? And of course, we'll have to add a primary container into the test definition. So the container would be a Flask container running in the Fargate service. And the container image would be from my my Docker Hub. So I'm gonna import the image like this: container ECS container image from the registry, and it's from the Pahoo Flask Docker sample latest. Okay. And we'll have to add the port mapping for this container, which is port 80 on the container port. Okay. And last but not least, we're gonna create the Fargate service with the ECS patterns construct application load balance Fargate service. Fargate service like this, and that's definition. Okay, and the cluster comes from this cluster. Okay, that's pretty much of it. And we probably would like to create a property for this construct. For example, the endpoint, which could be HTTPS or HTTP URL. So, for example, we have endpoint, which is the type string, and we can initialize the endpoint variable like this. For example, service load balancer DNS name like this, right? Then we have endpoint property of this construct, right? Okay. So now the most important of all is that make sure you open the second terminal in your IDE like this and run the yarn watch. So behind the scene, the yarn watch will trigger the JSII to compile the TypeScript, and eventually it will create a lib directory under your project. We'll just need to wait a few moments. Okay, see, there's a lib directory created, and there's a JS file, JavaScript file generated from your index.ts under the SRC directory. So do not touch anything under the lib directory. Just edit your TypeScript under the SRC directory. Okay. But we will need to make sure the construct can be created correctly in the CDK application. So I'm gonna create another file for the integration testing. So for example, under the source directory, I'm gonna create integ. For example, default.ts, and it's an integration testing file, and I'm gonna import. I'm gonna import the bar construct from the index.ts, and I'm gonna also import the core from CDK. Right? Okay. So now I'm trying to create a sample CDK application from scratch with a CDK application, CDK stack, and of course a CDK construct. So what I'm gonna do is like this. For example, new CDK app, and we will create our stack in this app, and the stack name is, for example, my demo stack, right? And I'm gonna define my region and account like this, and make sure we define our environment in the property of the stack. And now we're going to create the demo, the bar stack like this, just new bar, and the bar lives in the stack as the parent scope, and the ID is my bar, for example. Okay, that's all. And there's only one optional property, which is VPC, right? If I define VPC, then the service will run in the existing VPC. Otherwise, the construct will create a new one for me. So in this case, I'm gonna define my default VPC to reduce the creation time for a new VPC. So in this case, I'm gonna define my VPC would be the default VPC like this. For example, VPC equals to EC2 VPC from lookup stack VPC is default true. Okay, and the VPC comes from the default VPC like this. Okay, and we put it in a single line. Okay, so now our construct is ready, and our complete CDK application would be like this. So always make sure when everything is ready, make sure your second terminal, because the young watch keeps watching and compiling everything you typed. Make sure eventually it found 0 errors. Otherwise, you have to fix it. Okay, so if everything is good, let's just run the CDK diff like this. npx CDK app points to the lib integ.default.ts diff. Okay, because this file integ.default.ts will be compiled to the JavaScript file under the lib directory, so we can simply run the cdk CLI -app pointing to the JavaScript file, and we'll be able to deploy the CDK application like this. So every time before deployment, always run the CDK diff to see what's gonna happen, what's gonna create it, what's gonna remove, what's gonna modify it. If everything is good, just run the deploy and hit yes. Okay, before waiting the deployment, I'm gonna create my GitHub repository. So I'm gonna create an empty GitHub repository like this. For example, cdk-bar. Okay, just hit create repository. Okay, then we go back to the VS Code, waiting for the deployment. Let's assume the deployment will be succeed. Then let's go to the projenrc.js file. Because we are gonna deploy and publish this as a library and publish not only npm but also Python, we'll have to define the definition of Python. So we just define the Python distribution name, for example, cdk-bar, and the module name, cdk_bar. Okay. Then I'm gonna open the third terminal and run the npx Projen again. So by defining the Python, behind this thing, the npx will synthesize the GitHub action workflow, the release workflow for me. And if you open the release workflow, there will be a release pypi job in this workflow, which means the GitHub action will release not only the npm, which is defined here, release npm, but also the pypi. So we will need to define 3 secrets for this GitHub repository. The first one would be npm token, which is the only required secret for the npm. And for pypi, we will need twine username and twine password. You will need to register your account from the pypi, and make sure you configure the username and password in the GitHub repository secrets. Okay. So now our deployment is completed. Let's just hit the URL to make sure the service ready and running. Okay, congratulations. So the service is good. Okay, so the service is good. So now, what I'm gonna do is that before the first deploy, before the first commit and push, I'm gonna create a integration testing for this project, and to create an integration testing, I'm gonna create a snapshot for my CDK application. So the snapshot is literally the CloudFormation template for this application. So my CDK application will be like this, right? And I'm gonna remove the default VPC. I'm gonna remove the EC2. I'm just make everything simple and straightforward. For example, in this case. So what I'm gonna do is that I will wrap everything from the CDK application to the construct into a class. For example, the class would be IntegTesting as. And I'm gonna put everything under in this class. And I will new this class to create everything required. So why I have to do this? I will still need to define a stack, which is an array of CDK stack here. And I'm gonna I'm gonna put the stack into the stack array. Put this stack into the stack property here. So why I have to do this? Because I'm gonna create a test case to generate the snapshot for this whole CDK application. So you can always reference to any existing project. For example, the cdk-k3s cluster. For example, in this case, I have a snapshot testing, integ.snapshot.test.ts. So I'm gonna create exactly the same file. This test case will import the IntegTesting class from the integ.default.ts, which is literally everything, which is the complete CDK application. And there's only single test case to validate the snapshot. So if the snapshot does not exist, then it will iterate all the stacks in the application and synthesize into the synthesize to a new snapshot written into the test directory. Okay, so let's just save and hit the young test. By running the young test, it will run all the tests under the test directory. So in this case, I have the snapshot test, and I have initial hello.test.ts, which you can feel free to remove this hello test.ts. You can just leave the snapshot ts and run again. Okay, So make sure you pass the test, and a new snapshot will be generated and created under the snapshots directory. So snapshots is actually the CloudFormation template synthesized from the CDK application. So if everything is good, just run the young build. The young build will build everything, including the document, which is the API.md. It's a document generated from your source code. And during this time, you can configure your secrets for your GitHub repository. You will need at least 3 secrets, including the npm token, twine username, and twine password. Make sure you configure your secrets before your first commit and push. Okay, so now we'll see that API.md is generated by the JSII. Okay, so actually it's a document auto-generated from your source code. So we will need to commit along with this document. Okay, so now everything is ready. Let's git init this current directory, and let's see. I'm gonna exclude something from it, including the cdk-context.json. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to go back to the projenrc.js. I'm gonna declare the exclusion like this. Okay, so I'm gonna exclude cdk out, cdk-context.json images. For example, if you have an image directory, and probably young arrow log, and I will generate update .npm ignore and .git ignore, and I will run the npx projen again to update the npm ignore and git ignore. I'm going to run the npm status again. Make sure everything is good, right? And then we just git add everything and commit first. Commit branch main. Okay, before because the default branch would be the main branch, so make sure you configure your npx. Make sure configure projenrc the release branches to the main branch, because the default is the master branch, which is not available for the new repository in GitHub. And run the npx projen again. And I'm gonna run the git remote add. And before the initial push, I'm gonna run the young bump. This, for example, 010 is my initial release. Then I just hit the git push. Okay, now go back to our GitHub repository. The laser release workflow will be triggered, and this workflow comes with an initial build job. Make sure the build can succeed. Then it will start releasing to npm and pypi. Okay. Okay, so after a few minutes, the build and release will be all completed. Okay, so let's go to the release to npm release workflow, and if you open to see the detail, let the cdk-bar version 010 was just published, success. And if we go to the pypi, publishing to pypi was success as well. Then we just go to the npm. For example, let's search for the cdk-bar. Okay. So our construct is published in npm and pypi as well. cdk-bar. Right? And for example, if we want to do a minor version bump with the README update, for example, so in this case, let's open the README and there's nothing inside, right? So for example, I'm gonna update my README like this: cdk-bar demo construct library created with Projen, right? And simple. We're gonna have some simple code inside. We can just go to the integration testing and just copy the simple from the integration testing to the README like this. And okay, we can preview the README in the VS Code. Okay, so if everything is good, let's just git commit. For example, update README, right? And we just run the young release. So the young release will version bump with the minor version number, for example, 010 to 011. And if you want to specify any specific version, you will have to run the young bump. Okay. Okay, so there's an arrow. So I'm gonna run this command again. Okay, so now the version number is 011. Let's just go back to the GitHub repository. So, and there's a release workflow being triggered immediately after you push to a repository. Here, right? Then we can just sit and wait the build and release completed. Our README is here. Looks great. Okay, so what happened is that we just create a bar construct and publish a cdk-bar, the package name to npm and pypi, and we have created a snapshot testing as our integration testing. But what if we want to have a unit testing? What can we do? So for example, let's go to the one of my project, for example, the CDK for K3S cluster. If you open the test directory, there is a cluster.ts .test.ts cluster test. So it's a unit testing from the Jest framework. So for example, we can just copy one test case from this sample, and we can go to the test directory. For example, default.test.ts. We are going to import the bar from index, from source directory, which will refer to the index.TypeScript, right? And we are going to create our first test case. So create the default bar construct correctly. And Even we have CDK application and the default CDK stack, then when we knew the bar in the stack and its ID, for example, it's my bar, then we can expect we will have some resources inside. For example, we probably would have application load balancer, right? So in this case, for example, I'm gonna check if we have the load balancer. So what I'm gonna do is that I just remove everything inside. For example, we will have to figure out the CloudFormation resource name of the application load balancer. So we can simply open our snapshot and check the load balancer. Okay, so the resource type would be AWS Elastic Load Balancing v2 load balancer, right? So we could expect that we're gonna have a load balancer resource type inside. So it's a very basic unit testing for this scenario. Okay, we can run the test again. Let's run it again. Okay, so we have passed the default.test.ts. Okay, we don't need the EC2. So by doing this, we can create many different unit testing cases in this TypeScript file. For example, we can also validate the task definition. For example, task definition. Let's validate the task definition. For example, expect stack to have resource. And for example, we can run a check like this: full equals bar. But obviously, there would be no property from the test definition like full equals bar, right? Then we just run it and see what's really inside. Okay, so we are expecting a property full, and this value is bar from the test definition. But obviously, there's no property like this. But it also print the complete property of this of the test definition. So we can validate some property of it. For example, we can validate the container definition. For example, we can just copy this container definition, and we can just paste. We can run the young test again, and you'll see that the default test.ts just passed, right? Which means that the test case has been validated, right? Okay, so this could be our unit testing, one of our unit testing. So you can have multiple unit testing defined in this file to validate every single piece of your stack or your application. Everything is good, and then we just git add, git commit, git young release, run the git push again. Okay, so now a new release flow is coming, which is 0.10, 0.12, and we have our unit testing inside. Okay, unit testing here, right? Okay, and by the way, if you're interested, you can create some interesting pages like this in your README. So, for example, you can simply copy paste the markdown of the README like this into your README, and make sure you update the package name. For example, cdk-bar, 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 right? Right? Okay. Yep. And we're gonna update README again, but we will not bump the version. Then we just hit commit, push, and go back to our project. Okay, then we have the cute pages here, right? And the previous, the 012 is almost completed. It's releasing to npm pypi now. So by release completed, we'll have the 012 hopefully. And the interesting thing is that, for example, if we go to the npm, we have the original sample in TypeScript, right? But if we go to the pypi, you'll see that there's an auto-generated sample code in Python, which is really amazing. And you just need to write in TypeScript, and the JSII will generate the Python sample code in the README for you, which is really amazing. Okay, the 012 release is complete. Okay, the pypi 012. Okay, 012 now. That's pretty much of it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you can start building your custom CDK construct with Projen like this and publish to npm in Python. So make sure you write your testing, including the snapshot testing as well as the unit testing, and don't hesitate to share your construct with us in Twitter or in GitHub. And if you are any interested, don't you can just go to my YouTube personal channel, and please hit the subscribe if you haven't. And I will try to make more CDK videos in English. I hope you enjoyed. So see you next time. Bye-bye.